There should be like a designated billionaire that has to stay out in case.
That's right. There were too many billionaires there. What if they had bombed the Capitol Rotunda and we lost all of our billionaires?
Yeah, what would we do?
Podcast that is mostly agnostic about supposedly supernatural phenomena. Because for all we know about the natural world and how it works and how it definitely does not, there is plenty more that we do not know. And this podcast believes it is a mistake to attribute to the supernatural that which can be more likely explained by the ordinary workings of physical reality, of which we are simply ignorant. And a mistake to transmogrify mere coincidence into a narrative. Narratives which are almost always in service of what we want to believe about the world, rather than an explanation of how the world really is. All of which is a preface to the following true thing that happened this week. Tom, or Doc, as he was known to many, a man who was married to my mother for a time, who was my second, and good Christ Almighty, let's hope, last stepdad, died early Sunday morning. He was an old man, but not ancient. He outlived the average life expectancy of a man born when he was born by a half-decade or so. But he was quite sick these last few years. I can't say that we were close, but we were friendly enough. His often terrible opinions about the 1999 film The Matrix being bad and Irish whiskey being superior to bourbon and the general coolness of Celtic knots notwithstanding. I loved him as one loves any in-law, I suppose, which is to say, eventually, and because people you love them. He was good, which, though it may sound like a cheap or easy pronouncement, is not something I say lightly. He was bright and always good for an interesting conversation and a smile and a kind word, despite what I think is fair to call a generally sad disposition. Maybe the sort of sadness of someone for whom the difference and importance of right and wrong came fairly easily, and who looked around him and saw how rarely the world properly reflected this, and was dispirited by it. He was also quite funny and delightfully sarcastic, and could occasionally toss off a withering aside that poked the ego without cutting the human underneath. A bit like my long-dead grandfather, but without the curdled cruelty imparted in childhood and parceled out, if diminishingly so, for a lifetime thereafter. Tom's was a kind and mocking nature in that order. Both my mother and grandmother loved them both, of course, and from here, this is understandable. Most of all, though, Tom leaves behind a son. My brother, who is too young to have lost his father, but old enough to have taken on the responsibility of his care for some time. A million small acts of heroism that go unnoticed and unremarked upon as the dutiful expressions of love that they are, but which I admire. Each of these moments of care, a distinct memory I hope Jesse can mine for a lifetime of remembering that Tom loved him and was loved in return, which is all that matters and will endure, parceled out for a lifetime thereafter. All of which is a preface for yet something else, that I woke up early Sunday morning certain that Tom was dead, and at 6:25 a.m. I heard a noise that sounded like it was coming from just on the other side of my eyeballs, inside my head, that sounded like a large, heavy chainmail gate either falling into place or being yanked dramatically away. It was a metallic and extremely physically present sound that I more felt than heard, and for which I have no explanation. I had just spoken to my mother the afternoon before, and in that conversation we discussed Tom's very likely, very rapidly approaching end. So my waking certainty was not without a seed, and I was not surprised when she called me a few hours later, Sunday morning, with the news. And I have not been sleeping well lately, and it has not at all been unusual to wake up after just a few hours' sleep with strange things running through my mind. And how many times these last few years have I woken with something of a jolt, and my cancer-ridden grandmother on my mind, or my bedridden grandfather, and glanced at the glowing numbers on the bedside table to clock the moment for future reference? The answer is dozens of times or more, and not once yet have either of them turned out to have recently departed the mortal plane. Which is to say that I am, of course, skeptical that the certainty with which I awoke Sunday morning, and the undeniably strange sound I heard clanging inside my skull, are connected, nor that they prove, or even suggest, some sort of spiritual reality. But they are facts of my experience, and to not report it would feel like withholding something of consequence, would be to deny something because I don't like what other people will do with the information, with how they will fold it into what they believe about the world. And when we have lost who we have loved, or perhaps more accurately, when the possibilities for new and unique experiences with that person have been exhausted, not lost, but completed, I think it is important to share that last fleeting incident, even if it is best explained as an unbidden synaptic accident or coincidence, even if the truth of that moment will mean something radically different to someone else. Because, in humility, we just don't know, cannot know. But whatever comfort or love can be found in the mystery, all the better. A mystery I offer to you in the spirit of my now deceased once stepdad, a spirit of kindness, humility, and sadness, and, as always, a bit of gentle, eyes twinkling, teasing. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori is here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
Just fine.
Lori's just fine. Tonight is Tuesday, as previously established. 2025, January the 21st, 2025, I should say. Forgive me, slightly out of sorts. How you doing tonight, Abe? Doing well?
Doing
Good weekend?
well. Yeah, a lot of football, but not much else this weekend.
Did you, after Trump's dramatic executive order that was signed yesterday in front of the public, God and everyone, were you forced, shoehorned back into the office early this morning because of Trump's executive action?
No, nothing has changed on our end. There seems to be a lot of discussion on how to interpret the information received.
I was going to say, I'll bet there was a lot of nuancing the executive order in the company Slack or Teams or whatever it is you guys use down there.
Teams. But yeah, so basically the information we got is just stay put and we'll receive information when we receive it. But right now, everybody just do what you're doing.
Which is, to be clear, the majority of you are out of office, correct?
Well, not the majority of us. So there are a lot of people that are in office. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's pretty good number of people that are.
How would he know he's not there?
But there's that's true. But there are certain because there are certain duties that are not portable. You can't do them from your bedroom, right?
Yeah.
Like sorting out the mail or whatever, or the checks that still come in. People still send in checks for whatever reason. But for other jobs that are mostly analytical stuff, where you're just typing on a laptop, you can do that from the moon, in theory. And so those people they go to the office maybe once a week or twice a week or 0 times a week, as is the case for me. But that's likely to change. They're planning on changing that this summer, so that may get accelerated. But this is all just from the last 5 years or so.
Gotcha. So a couple things here real quick. As a point of order about the show moving forward, the last couple episodes of the show have gotten the boot from Spotify. Now, I'm accustomed to our shows getting blocked or partially blocked on YouTube, especially in foreign, like in Russia. Like our show is not accessible on YouTube in Russia most of the time because for whatever reason, the copyrighted music is not allowed to be played in Russia. I don't know if that's a sanctions thing.
No kidding. Russia. No wonder our numbers are low.
That's right. We're missing out on
Yep.
150 million Soviets. But it's because I include copyrighted music whenever we do the Billboard Hot 100 game, right? Like, I'm not shy about it. I could play the whole song because ultimately, like, I'm not trying to monetize these YouTube videos. And so the ones that make it through YouTube where the copyright holder is not objecting to its use but just wants to be compensated for it, then, like, if any monetization is going to happen, it would happen for them and not for us. But, of course, I don't monetize the show on YouTube, so it doesn't matter. But, like, to get the last 2 episodes all of a sudden kicked off, I don't know if it's a New Year thing or if it's because in the last 2 episodes, I've downloaded higher quality versions of the songs instead of just sort of ripping them from a stream.
Or maybe they just found a new algorithm that's
Right.
smarter.
Or they just finally stumbled upon the fact that I'm doing this. But they've removed the last couple episodes of the show from Spotify, which is frustrating to me because I don't want people not to be able to access it in their normal point of access, right? And so we need to reimagine somehow or another how we do the Billboard Hot 100 game. And I was thinking like an annoying and meta way of doing it would just be to talk about the songs.
Just talking about the songs. Link the songs.
Yeah, link the songs in the show note or what have you and say, like, look, if you want to listen to this, go listen to it. But, like, all of the joy that is derived from this show, from that segment, is from being able to play clips and dropping the clips in. Even when the songs are bad, I like to drop 10 seconds of some other good song in, right? And so I don't know what to do from here because obviously
we proved the degradation of the culture. So
yeah.
Just to be clear, you are 100% sure it's the music that's the issue and not some other issue? Did they identify that as the cause?
It's got to be.
Yes, Spotify is saying it is because you're using copyrighted music, and they're not even saying like, and I can appeal it. But, of course, all of these copyright appeals are fucking bullshit because I'm not the rights holder to it. Like, I have no actual claim. And the defense of this is fair use because we're doing criticism of it is both accurate and also completely worthless. Like, it's one of those things where we are 100% in the right for the most part, but it doesn't matter. All of the power is with the copyright holders because, like, Warner Music Group and whoever else pay their lawyers exorbitant fees every year just for this purpose.
It's interesting that Spotify is alone in this, right? Like, if maybe
it's interesting. It's more interesting to me that it's just now started happening.
Right,
And
but
so
maybe
I
they
don't
just
know-
upgraded, like Lori's saying, they upgraded their technology maybe to where they can better detect. But it isn't maybe the other, and they're not going backward, right? These are just the new releases, right?
The 2 most recent releases, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. A thought that I had was to break it out as its own thing and just post it to the Substack. Substack doesn't fucking care, as far as I can tell. I've never heard a word of complaint from Substack about me using copyrighted shit in the stuff I put up. So maybe moving forward, that could be like a subscriber-only benefit to those of you out there who receive the emails, and you can just get 20 or 30 minutes or less. Like that segment is usually pretty quick. It's like 10 or 15 minutes that we do. So maybe I break it out as its own thing if we want to keep doing it.
We're not doing it tonight either way.
We're not doing it tonight either way, but that's
10 o'clock.
one reason why is because I don't want to get kicked
We don't
off
wanna
of
get in
various
trouble.
platforms because of using music. So yeah, we'll figure something out. If that appeals to you, folks out there who are listening, and I know we joke, Lori, quote unquote, jokes about how no one's listening all the time. I know that there are some people listening, as a matter of fact.
Hi,
And so
Catherine.
if you have an interest in that, in us breaking out that as its own standalone thing once a week, let us know. Send an email, brainironpodcast@gmail.com, or comment in the Substack, as is your right as a paying subscriber, if you so choose.
Or you could text us, Corey.
Or yeah, just send us a text. That works too. All right, let's open up the WGAS news bag. It's time for Who Gives a Shit News. Really don't know what to talk about. Not a whole lot.
Quiet week.
Talk about J.D. Vance's kids and how poorly behaved they were and how mean the commentators were.
The CNN color commentators during the Trump indoor parade last night at the Capital One Center in D.C., which they moved it inside because it was so cold. We're talking about, like, they made like 3 or 4 different comments in less than 45 minutes about like J.D. Vance's rowdy child running all up and down on the stage up there. They were just
being normal kids at a boring event.
Right.
Very rude. And then also, I might as well say this now because I doubt we'll get to it later. They had some Mississippi school, famous historically black college. Their marching band was there performing as the final act before the speeches started, and the commentators were giving us remember the old CNN thing during the riots in Minneapolis or wherever, where the guy was standing in front of a burning building and the news chyron on the bottom of the screen said mostly peaceful protests are breaking out here.
That's right.
With a full city block on fire over this guy's shoulders. The color commentators for this parade thing that was happening in the arena were like, as you can tell, they're having a great time. They're here really having the best time, and they're so happy to be here. And the shots of all of the drum majors and the various drummers and musicians in this marching band, they were like uniformly stoic. Right. And expressionless, and like one of them was making he with the beat he was sticking his tongue out, like part of the act.
They were not happy to be there.
Was to turn his head to the side and just stick the tongue out, like that was part of the act. But like they were not at all super excited to be there for
an HBCU band, which are normally like very happy and animated.
Yeah, it was a weird.
Maybe this one isn't. They're not all that way. Some of them are very like they want to fight you, but this didn't seem like that either.
It was weird. It was a weird gaslighting of the audience, being told what a blast these kids were having when they were just very clearly stone-faced before us.
Maybe they were promised an outdoor kind of thing, and now they're cooped up with all the others.
And to be fair, maybe whoever was in front of the CNN commentator at the time, because they were on the floor there, was in fact having a great time, for all we know. But they didn't put that person on camera. It was a little bit weird.
There were like 300 of them, and not one smile.
Right, that we could see anyway.
That I could see from my angle.
The camera person could have helped out the person in front of the camera by maybe moving to some excitement. Come on.
Anyway, all of that is a bit of a silly aside to the events of the day. I watched 3 Donald Trump speeches yesterday, including the official inaugural, the secondary unofficial inaugural to the crowd that was gathered outside of the main room there at the Capitol. And then also there at the Capital One Center, he gave another speech at the end of the evening before all of the balls and whatnot started to the gathered supporters there. Did you watch, or did you just watch coverage of and see highlights of these various speeches, Abe?
So I did not catch any of the festivities beyond the inauguration part, where the Carrie Underwood and that preacher who was like lifting a lot of like MLK stuff for whatever reason, and the one
lifting or remixing, Abe. I would call that interpretive reimagination of a lot of MLK.
He was very, very excited, and also so basically I just caught the main meat of the action. I have the rest recorded. Maybe this weekend I'll go back and watch the rest of.
You really got big plans this weekend, don't you?
There are only a couple
only 2 football games, I guess. Yeah.
So I want to save that up. I don't want to go through it all in one day. But yeah, I caught the main part of it. I have a bone to pick with. I know that's not the major part of what we're talking about, but this Chief Justice, another fuck up. This is This is his fault. This is not Trump's fault. Remember the first Obama inauguration where he just kind of like flubbed the lines, and then it caused Obama to kind of like flub the line, and they're like, did we do it right? Like, I think they had to redo it, like in a indoor ceremony.
They did a backup re-swearing in hours later behind closed doors.
Right, because the Chief Justice, his cadence does not play the way that you would expect. You know, like I so and so, you know, do solemnly swear. Like there's like a cadence to it, and he fucked it up.
Roberts, did you try this once in the bathroom before you came down here? You idiot! Like fucking give it a shot.
He's
ahead
like,
of time.
I'm one take Roberts. Everybody knows that. Like I know no practice.
He's done this before.
But then, like now, okay, so now this in the second Trump inauguration. Now this is a different setting, so maybe he was thrown off by that. It's a more intimate inside setting, but like he kind of rushed it. So like J.D. Vance, they do his thing, and then all right, you guys fuck off. And Trump gets up there, and Trump is not a Bible guy. I don't know, he sells Bibles, whatever, but that's just like a thing.
No, he holds it like this.
Yeah.
Look, you're gonna blame this on Roberts. This is
entirely
Melania.
his fault.
And this is Trump.
It.
This is Trump not knowing. Melania was there. She was in position.
She got there too late because Justice Roberts
the rest of the family was late. Roberts could have given them an extra beat, right?
Yes, he could have.
To let the kids get there. Yeah. Melania was there. Trump just fucking missed his cue to put the hand on the Bible. No. The Bible was there.
You're right. Eventually, the Bible was there. Two Bibles for added measure. This is a Lincoln Bible was making the rounds.
No, it's the same thing. It's the same thing he did the first go round, which is it's a Lincoln Bible and like the one that Lincoln put his hand on,
which Obama used in the flub. So maybe Chief Justice has a problem with the Lincoln Bible. That's what's going on. It's throwing him off. Something is happening with that Bible.
The second Bible is Trump's beloved childhood Bible that his mother gave him, apparently.
Right. Which is weird.
Almost certainly still has the original uncracked binding on it. Has not been opened.
If you walk out of your house every day, keys, phone, wallet. Like if you leave
Bible
somewhere, like you feel like something is missing. Like if you do something enough, you feel its absence. Like if he were a religious, pious man, he would notice the fact that his hand is not on any Bible, right? This is just like a thought that did not cross his mind. So I'm going to give Trump a mulligan. That's not his thing. He plays it up for whatever, but that's not his thing. But the Chief Justice, take a beat. Like, all right, Trump is there. Melania is just kind of rushing, and she's just kind of like, all right, I'm here. And then he just goes right into it. Just give him a moment.
I'm telling you, watch the tape. This is not on Roberts.
No, he needs to look at the president
How many fucking Trump children do we need to wait for to make their way out of the audience to join the parade here?
But
Fuck that.
As the Chief Justice, he should look at Trump's eye, because Trump is like, power, give it now, right? Like he's focused on that, right?
It's 12 o'clock and 14 seconds. Let's get this ball rolling, Johnny.
What a good Chief Justice would do is look in the eye of the president-to-be and then kind of guide his eyes to the Bible, right. And then Trump, oh yeah, that whole thing, yes. And then he can do that and then can go from there. But this is 0-2. This is a second strike on Roberts. Keeping an eye on him.
All right. You mentioned the setting, obviously very intimate setting, especially for Jeff Bezos' girlfriend, Laura Sanchez. She found the setting to be quite intimate, as did Mark Zuckerberg.
As did he. Boy, was he looking.
To be fair, and I don't mean this in any way to sound sexist or regressive or anything like that, and I apologize to whatever extent it sounds that way. But if you're going to wear a suit jacket that is entirely open.
You're saying
and
inviting the look. Okay.
Underneath it is revealing lingerie. You're begging for people to look at your chest. And that's just, and I don't mean that in a judgy way. She is clearly into people looking at her chest, or else she wouldn't have left the house to go appear at the presidential inauguration half naked, right? Like, and that's fine. More power to her. She spent a lot of money.
It's not like it was cold out.
Jeff spent a lot of money on the various accoutrements that she's got working for her these days, and more power to her. If she's proud of them, fucking show them off. But let's not. I know, Mark, you're fucking 40 years old. You're a bit of a dweeb.
A bit.
It's like Priscilla. The old lady doesn't have those sorts of assets that Lauren Sanchez is working with. You're getting a look at something that you're not accustomed to outside of the Instagram feed, whatever Instagram you've got.
What are you talking about? This guy's got a virtual reality, the meta thing. You don't think he's ogling in that realm?
It's a good point. But like real life, ogling opportunities, I don't blame him. I'm sorry. And I don't think anybody should be blamed.
Bob knows what it's like to not have the opportunities in real life.
What was up with that, the seating arrangement? Like, why did they have all these tech fucks taking priority over his cabinet? Like,
because
they're in charge now.
Because the cabinet didn't pay $1 million each to the inaugural committee. Abe, they bought those tickets. The cabinet are just there because it's their job.
If you're going to go through the trouble of having those rich fucks in that row, put them in MAGA order: Meta, Amazon, Google, Apple. But he had like Tesla.
God.
He was like all over the place. Like, come on, you got to do a thing.
Why don't they ask you?
Yeah, no, just the seating arrangement.
Wow.
But they were just like that's like half of the country's riches right there. There should be like a designated billionaire that has to stay out in case.
That's right. There were too many billionaires there. What if they had bombed the Capitol Rotunda and we lost all of our billionaires?
Yeah, what would we do?
My impression of that gathered crowd, you're talking about all the billionaires, and my feeling watching this, first of all, was that this was a display of American grotesquerie, largely speaking, and that was largely the crowd, not necessarily the former presidents, which they themselves are obviously a bit of a display of American grotesquerie. But this display of wealth and power and the graspingness that it all suggests, where they all demand that they must all be in this room to witness this thing so that they can be on television, so that they can show fealty to the powers that be. Whether it's Republicans or Democrats or whoever, it strikes me as fucking gross. And the fact that it's happening in this tiny room really reinforces it in a way that it wouldn't feel quite as gross if it were happening outside and they were all spread out more. And because Calvin was like, are there any normal people here?
Aww.
Like, are there, like,
No.
How did you, like, can you go to this, essentially? And I said, yeah, you can. Normally, you can just go and sit outside on the mall and watch this happen if you want to. But because this is happening in the Rotunda, this is actually it's a very hot ticket.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the people who are inside there are either powerful Washington politicians or people who are going to work in the administration, or they paid a great deal of money for the privilege of sitting in there.
Is this a kind of ticket you can scalp?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, because like you probably need to have your,
No, because you got to probably have your ID.
Way too many presidents to just have some like random person be in there.
That's the thing. You don't. It's the sort of thing you don't actually need your ID because they know exactly who you are.
Yeah, but they need to pretend.
Yeah. All right.
I guess all the normal people were in the arena, right? In this setting, like if it weren't so cold, everybody would be there. But they separated the very important people in there, and then all the normies who flew in are in the arena watching.
Yeah,
hissing and booing.
The true rabble were in Capital One Arena. Yeah. The moderate rabble, like the governors and stuff, were out in the other hall inside the Capitol. And Trump went and spoke to them after the 40-minute speech that he gave. On the speech itself, in terms of the optics of it, I was struck over and over again by the way he was leaning. And he often does this. He has this lean that he does off to the side of the microphone, and he relies heavily on one of the two teleprompters that are there for him. And in part, I'm sure it's because he's old and like it fucking sucks to have to stand up straight all the time. And so he gets on one elbow often and leans off to the side. But because of the fact that off his left shoulder, but to us, his right, like facing us, his right side, behind him was Biden and Harris, right. And then the families, and then the other presidents as well. You could sort of see W there off on the far side, and the Clintons as well. But the way that he was leaning and the direction, his whole posture was such that because this is an incredibly intimate setting, I mean, Biden couldn't have been more than 5 feet or so off behind him there. It seemed like he was literally, when he was getting into the meatier and meaner aspects of this speech that were very directly condemnatory of the Biden administration and what's happened in the last 4 years, it felt like he had literally and was on purpose physically turning his back so that he did not have to face them as he said these things, which was sort of amusing to watch and kind of striking to watch also, because it's, again, in much the same way where I found it to be a sort of grotesque display of wealth and power there because of the smallness of the room and the way everybody is jammed in there and nobody else was allowed in. In a normal situation, yeah, Biden and Harris have pride of place, but pride of place is fucking 30 feet away from Trump as he's given that speech. It's not right there behind the guy, breathing down his neck as it's happening. So it was quite a thing to watch, I thought.
Do you prefer the old? I mean, you would rather have it be outdoors, just in general?
Yeah,
it's really fucking cold.
My preference is for it to be outdoors because I think it's a better look.
Yeah.
The backdrop is fucking unbeatable. And obviously, in terms of that, the optics of it, I don't fucking care because it's Trump. And like when was the last time I actually had hope for one of these assholes who was giving one of these speeches? I don't know.
Probably Obama, because that was his whole thing.
But yeah, like my preference is for it to be outside. But I did get a kick out of this arrangement also. It must be said. Yeah,
it was unusual, and I mean, this is owed to the weather, but like, it was good to, because they said, the second Reagan inauguration was indoors also, but I don't remember any like during the Clinton, Bush, Obama year. So I was like, this is how it looks. Like, how are they going to fit all these people?
That one was so indoors and so sort of ad hoc that his speech wasn't even rewritten to reflect it. Because he
joked about
it. He had to ad lib a joke in the middle of the speech about how, because it's like, we're gathered here on these steps that lead up to the building that is and in fact this is while he's standing inside the building that he's talking about being on the steps of, and so he had to sneak sort of an ad lib in, which was like he's great at, obviously, sort of his whole thing.
They used that for a scene on the West Wing where the speechwriters wrote it assuming that it would be outdoors, but there was some sort of inclement weather, and they moved it indoors, but Bartlett didn't catch it. He just said it, look out in the, whatever, beautiful vista or something.
Bartlett's no Ronald Reagan.
He didn't catch it.
On the content, it was sort of equal parts dark and gloomy, but weirdly also a deeply political speech in a way that inaugural addresses usually are not. I think it's fair to say this was closer to a traditional State of the Union or otherwise stump speech than it was a broad outline of hopes and dreams. It was very sort of promise and policy heavy as far as these sorts of things go, to the point where he's promising executive actions that he's going to take in mere hours before then subsequently delivering on those actions. So it was unusual in that way.
Well, I was saying, like, I do wonder, these inauguration events, I'm sure the lion's share of the people watching are like of like mind, like people who support that particular president, and then other people are just kind of watching because maybe just out of tradition or whatever. The ratings came in and it wasn't very high. Like, I think it was like around 25 million. Like when he did it last in 2017, it was like 30 some odd million.
A second inauguration is always going to get.
There's a bit of a dip, but this is like an unusual second inauguration.
This is the most unusual possible second inauguration.
Right. Yes, but it is still a second one.
Yeah, it is a second one, and so like I wonder if the audience is like my people, right? So like he's basically speaking to the people at the arena and in the closed circuit in the next room. Like it's tailor made, kind of like I need to kind of throw the red meat and make this as political as possible and not have some sort of like kumbaya thing, right? Like, cause like there's nobody that's listening that's open to kumbaya. So like, why even bother doing that? And that's not Trump style anyways.
Well, but that's what makes any of the soaring rhetoric that they attempt to shoehorn in there ring particularly absurd.
Yeah.
Right. Because he does say, I'm the great unifier. And what does he say? I think he says I was saved by God to make America great again, was like was almost a direct quote, right? That like the millimeter miracle, as the pastor intoned shortly thereafter. He does sort of claim a lot of that soaring rhetoric at the same time that he's making these red meat political claims, which is incongruous, obviously. And then he walks out of there an hour later, and after seeing Biden off onto the helicopter, walks back into the Capitol and gives a significantly longer speech to a crowd that he's much more comfortable speaking to off the cuff, and without a prompter, without anything written, just fucking riffs in classic Donald Trump style for about an hour, including eventually like making some joke about Governor Abbott from Texas before realizing that Abbott was actually in the room, and then going on like a 5-minute riff about Abbott and like how concluding that riff with Abbott after talking for 5 minutes about how we're going to build the wall in Texas. Well, we built all of the wall in Texas, but we're going to build obviously even more wall in Texas now, and because he wants the wall, the Texas people want the wall, everybody wants the wall. Abbott is in desperate need of the wall, and then he concludes the riff by saying, "And we're gonna build so much wall so fast that you're going to be begging me to stop building so much wall." Like that is the kicker on the long run is you want all of this wall. You're asking for all of this wall. We're going to give you all of this wall. In fact, you're going to get so much wall. You're going to be calling me up, and you call early because you get up early. You're going to be calling me at like 6:30 in the morning, begging me, "Oh, sir, stop building so much wall." Like this is literally what he's doing an hour after walking out of that room. It's very bizarre.
He had like some, I don't know if it was in that, if it likely was in that setting. I just caught a bit of it where like he was talking about Scalise, you know, how he got shot, and he was talking about how his wife was like, she was like,
it's his favorite Scalise joke is to talk about how much Scalise's wife loves him and how shocked he is that a man's wife can possibly love a man that much.
It's such a bizarre thing to keep going back to.
Scalise over one shoulder and Melania Trump over the other shoulder. And he's talking about how you won't believe how much this woman loves this man. I've never seen anything like it.
Must be nice.
Yeah. And then he goes on a thing about Melania's feet, and it sounds like he's gonna do like creepy feet stuff,
like
about
a Rex
Melania.
Ryan thing, like.
And it's a quick pivot to how much her feet hurt, which is why she's sitting down instead of standing up because of her heels. Anyway, it was mainlining Trump basically. Was what that hour speech was. It was very classic throwback Trump.
How many executive orders did he sign?
I don't know. In front of everyone, he signed, I think, 12 or something like that. It's been a lot so far. I do want to get into some of the actual substance here.
Okay, well, it's 10:20.
I know the time. On the pardons, and I think it is only fair and right to begin with Joe Biden's pardons, which began in the morning, more or less waking up to the news that he had pardoned Anthony Fauci and Mark Milley and Liz Cheney and a number of other, like the entire January 6th committee got preemptive pardons, including like 50-odd staffers that worked on the January 6th committee. Adam Kinzinger also, of course.
The cop who was involved in the shooting of that Ashley what's-her-face also got pardoned. Right.
And that, arguably, I guess, that one, that if they're going to go after the cop who shot the only woman who died among the protesters, maybe.
Right. That one made some sense. Yeah, some semblance of logic there.
And I texted you when that news came out. The only thing left now is to see how long it is before the rest of the pardons come out, the family pardons come out. Because I believe I said on the show at some point that he was going to pardon his brother and possibly himself also. I did not see coming that he would pardon his entire family, with the exception of Jill Biden and himself, basically, that both of his brothers, who I had forgotten that there were two potentially corrupt Biden brothers, to be frank. I thought there was just the Frank, but there was another one also. But both of his brothers and their wives get pardons. In what he's saying is not that they did anything wrong. And this happened, by the way, I think 11:38 a.m. is what I heard some press pool reporter saying. We got an email at 11:38 a.m. after Biden had gotten into the limo to drive across town.
With Trump. They did the greeting and the whole thing they do at the White House and all that.
Right. And obviously he had signed them at some point earlier, who knows when precisely. But the announcement of it doesn't happen until 11:38 or 11:40 a.m., which is like the most unforgivable news dump you can possibly imagine.
It was deliberately to do that, right? Because basically that's around the time they're about to swear in the new president. So you deliberately wait and withhold it because you know there's gonna be some reaction to that, but you can't react to it because now we have a new president and he's saying some crazy stuff and oh my god, how many executive orders? So like the news cycle moved past it, and that was like deliberately done.
The news cycle will move past it. Not to be dramatic and highfalutin about it, but history will not. You cannot pardon your entire extended family for unspecified, uncharged, and uninvestigated crimes that you claim did not happen and expect to just walk away with your legacy intact. It is a purely shameful and profound moral and ethical crime what Joe Biden did here on the way out the door. That is, in fact, clearly far worse than what Bill Clinton did on the way out the door.
Oh, yeah, this is not even close, yeah.
The family members that Bill Clinton pardoned or commuted the sentences for had already been through the justice system, right? They had already, in fact, served time for the crimes, or were still serving crime. The particularly gross one that Clinton did was Marc Rich, the billionaire guy who was on the run, for a fugitive from justice at that point, right? He had not faced the music, and that one was gross. But in terms of close family relations and like suggesting somehow that the precedent for this had been set by Clinton with the pardon of his brother and the pardon of one of the one of the Rodham family members as well. Somebody in Hillary's family orbit got a pardon after having done crimes and also having been in prison. It's not the same thing.
Right.
It's not even remotely the same thing. You can get near to being it being the same thing with Hunter Biden, but Hunter didn't go to jail. Like, we didn't quite get there. Hunter was investigated and they were close to a deal and he was found guilty and all of that. But like we didn't ever get to the point where Hunter was going to be like actually repaid his debt to society. And Joe was like, no, we're going to pretend like that never fucking happened. And by the way, also anything he did or might have done for this 10-year period, we're going to make beyond the purview of any federal investigation. Which is just completely fucking unacceptable. And like, I know that it doesn't matter, essentially, what I'm going to say now. But the Republicans have spent the last 5 years talking about how Joe Biden is corrupt, how he is the head of the Biden crime family, and numerous congressmen, including Jim Jordan and the guy whose name I've been trying to find on the tip of my tongue for the last 30 seconds, but I can't, have spent years talking about how Biden is the head of the Biden crime family and they're all corrupt and they've been trading on his name to earn illicit money overseas for years, and they kick it back on up the family chain. And it was all smoke and no fire. And what is this? Right. What is this but another just absolute billowing cloud of smoke that suggests that there must be a fucking fire underneath. And it truly doesn't matter to me that Donald Trump had promised to investigate the Bidens and to root out the corruption inside the Biden crime family. Part of, if you're going to be in public service, this is a thing that I said with regards to officer-involved shootings. When police officers shoot people out there in the world, and it feels like they draw the gun and fire the shot because they're afraid for their own lives, and they do that too quickly. And one of my sort of ethical responses to that is to say, we give you this power, we put you in this position, and part of the burden of that power and that responsibility is that you carry with you a certain amount of risk, right, that you have to walk, that is a burden that you have taken on. That risk that we ask you to take on is because we think that you can handle it, and that to whip out your gun at the first moment of fear and fire upon someone because you claim you're afraid is a violation of the trust that we put in you. Even if it does ultimately save your life, at some point when we talk about the sacrifice and the heroism of being a person in that position, that is supposed to reflect some sort of burden that you're supposed to carry, some sort of risk that you're supposed to endure above and beyond what the rest of us do, right? And what the rest of us fly off at the handle and do violence in the face of possible violence, right? Right. And in the same way, what we ask of Joe Biden is that he endures and he takes on the burden of that level of investigation, right, of the discomfort of potentially being under the microscope for the remaining years of his life, because he was the most powerful man on the right planet for 4 years. Right. And because before that, he was the vice president for 8. And before that, he was a public servant for 50 years. So you can get the fuck out of here with any talk of sacrifice and doing the public good and doing a public service if on the way out the door, you're going to inoculate yourself and everyone around you from any sort of scrutiny for crimes that may or may not have been committed. You're supposed to bear that burden as a price for having done this job for all of these years, and it is an infamy against your character and against your legacy for all time afterwards because of what you've done here, and there's no getting around it.
It is hard to justify these actions. I mean, I like I was saying before, the reason why I thought it was not possible for Biden to take this course of action is because it is an indefensible act. First of all, it's unprecedented. Like no president has done this, where they're like, I'm concerned that things are going to happen that have not happened, and I'm going to issue pardons to my innermost circle and then people that are help me out here and there. Like that is now the precedent going forward. So like going forward, I mean, when Trump is leaving, he'll do the same thing, right? I mean, and also not to compare the two, but Monday, like the transition of power day, was a very bad look as far as abuse of a power that's granted to presidents, right? This pardon power, where one person uses this in this unprecedented way, like I'm going to keep repeating this, and then the other one, there was a guy that was serving a 22-year sentence pardon. Like all the people, basically January 6th is no longer January 6th. Like it's if it didn't happen, right? And basically, these are offsetting penalties. One of the issues of this being an unforced error, the other argument was that you're basically providing political cover for somebody else to do something like this, right? And so there's not much talk about this unusual, what is it, 1,600 people getting pardoned or their sentences commuted or what have you. The vast overwhelming majority were outright pardoned. A small handful had their sentences commuted. Right. But basically people just like walking out, like the guy that had his chair up at the speaker's office out, the leader of the Proud Boys, all of these people are out, right? And it's not even, it didn't even make that much of a headline. It's just like, oh, Biden did this and then Trump did that and everybody just move on. And so now going forward, there was no political cost to any of this because there isn't any political cost. It's just the president can do this, and that's the end of it. But going forward, this will continue to happen because there's no cost. Presidents will just do whatever they want, and they'll pardon everybody. And the last thing to go is the self-pardon, right? I guess that's the one thing that Biden did not do. But that's going to be – I don't think it's going to survive this term, right? So, like – One sincerely wonders why he did not. And the only thing that I can think of is that he believes that the Trump immunity decision that SCOTUS laid out Protects
last
him.
year inoculates him against basically anything, and that nobody would dare
Right.
come after a former president in that way, because like he couldn't possibly have harmed his legacy more
Right.
by pardoning himself as well. Like there's no amount of plausible deniability, as far as I can tell, that makes this a defensible thing. And the closest that you can get, and the closest that I'm willing to go, and I don't want this to read as any sort of defense of what Joe Biden did, is to simply say that if I'm trying to find the seed of where this bad thing is, I can trace it to Trump to the extent that I think I can convince myself that Joe Biden is sincere in his belief that Donald Trump is willing to do the things that he says he's going to do. Right. And Donald Trump has said he's going to investigate and throw in jail all of his political enemies. Right. Like, does he say that he's going to do that as a response to the lawfare that he himself has endured? Yes, surely, mostly that is the case. And to the extent that I think that, as I've said many, many times, that Donald Trump is the turd in the punch bowl in a way that makes that ruins it for all of us in a way that we don't fully appreciate. This is, to me, another unfortunate impact of the turd that is Donald Trump in our collective punch bowl. That doesn't excuse the actions of Joe Biden, but it's hard to imagine a situation in which this happens but for the existence and return of Donald Trump, right? Like it's sort of unimaginable,
Right.
That but for Trump's presence here, that this sort of thing would have happened. Maybe Hunter happens anyway, right? Maybe the Hunter pardon happens because he's just a softie for the kid or what have you. So that's as far as I'll go in anything that resembles an apologetics for what Biden did here. But I don't think that you can overstate how harmful and detrimental this was to a power that has, for all of its immensity, for all of its sort of absoluteness, has not been abused, and in fact, sort of the in fact, the opposite has been true, because for so long that norm held, right? That this was a sort of tremendous power, and that level of unaccountable tremendous power simply should not be deployed willy-nilly, should not be deployed in the way that Joe Biden did, and in the way that Donald Trump then turned around mere hours later and did as well. I think that it was a tremendous own goal on the part of Donald Trump to not wait 48 hours, by the way. Let Joe Biden take the heat for the pardons in the media for at least a couple of fucking days, right? Like, nobody's going to remember 10 years from now that you didn't follow through on your campaign promise to exonerate the J6ers on day 1 and in fact waited until day 5 or whatever. They're going to remember that you held to that promise, right? They just assume that he was busy that day, so he didn't get to it until the end of the first week. And that like, I don't understand at all the benefit politically from him doing this. This is a wildly unpopular thing that he did. Even among Republicans, Republicans did not want these people let out of jail or to have their sentences commuted or to be pardoned. This was, we all remember it, and I beg you, if for whatever reason you're a devoted Trump follower who's listening to me at this point, I can't imagine, but it is certainly possible. I beg you to go watch the footage from January 6th and tell me that these people shouldn't be in fucking jail. Right. If he had done this with a scalpel, as his apologists had suggested that he might, and had allowed those that had committed the worst crimes to stay in jail, or even if the ones that had done violence but have been in jail for a few years now, right, already, he had commuted their sentences but not pardoned them and just been like, I think that they've done their time.
Right.
That would be one story. But to just do this blanket thing where all of these people are let out as though, as you were suggesting a few minutes ago, as though this whole thing never happened, right? As though whatever happened that day doesn't fucking matter. There will be zero consequences for it, for anyone in a legal sort of way. That is also a stain and an infamy on a man that I didn't think it was possible that you could imagine that he could stain himself further. But this is awful. And it's another incredible abuse of a power that has not been abused in this way in the past. And it, like, I know what he's doing here from his personal psychology point of view, which is this is the only way that he can make this into a perfect phone call, right? He called the Ukraine call with Zelensky a perfect phone call.
Right.
The only way that January 6th can be perfect and pure in his mind is if nobody did any crimes on that day, right? This is as clear a profession of guilt as you're ever going to get from Donald Trump is the excusing of all of the violence that was done in his name on January 6th, 2021. And it's like it's a total weird unintentional reveal of what he actually thinks about that day.
It is a this cavalier approach is interesting. I mean, Trump is not running for office again. This is the end of the road for him. But there is political cost to letting go people who are convicted of violent actions. Because, like, let's say one of these people reoffends, right?
Every single reporter worth a shit is going to have a Google News alert for every police blotter all over the country for the next 30 fucking years.
Right.
For the moment that the Q shaman commits a gun crime in Florida. Right.
And basically, like, the law enforcement apparatus had him, and then he was let go, and then he committed the crime, and somebody suffered, some victim. But I guess, again, maybe Trump doesn't care about that because, like, he's not running for office again. So what harm is it going to come his way? He's already going to be, like, in the 40s with the approval rating. So it's not like he's trying to win some legacy points. So maybe he just didn't care.
The general cowardliness of Republicans in response to this is shameful, with the exception, I think, of a few, including a North Carolina congressman who put forth some bogus legislation condemning or whatever they do in the Senate when they want to condemn various actions. But he also put forth some legislation about it, like various federal crimes being tied to violence against police officers on federal land as some sort of mini protest to Trump's decision to pardon all of these people. Which is worth nothing, obviously. I'm going to jump in here to say something else that I forgot to bring up in our conversation, even though it stood out to me as I was watching the night before, and struck me as a particularly egregious form of Trump sort of whataboutism and the moral equivalency that he's engaged in with things that are fundamentally and profoundly different. Shortly before he spoke in the evening speech at Capital One Arena, he was introduced by a guy's name, I think, is Steve Wyckoff. He's the guy that was Trump's envoy to Israel last week, or in the couple weeks leading up to the ceasefire deal that was finally struck. And I don't want to, at the moment, nothing to say about the ceasefire deal. But Trump's dude, his point person on that deal, was back and introducing him before the Capital One crowd. And he brought up on stage, just before introducing Trump, the families of Israeli hostages who had made the trip back. Some of whom I believe were Americans, and others of whom I believe were not. But they were brought on stage. They were there. A dozen of them, maybe, I don't know, wearing yellow scarves lined up behind Steve as he finished his speech, and then as Trump was brought on to give his talk. And like, I don't know who was in charge of the optics in that moment, if the plan was to just allow them to stay standing back there or not, or if somebody just in that moment where they hadn't necessarily been expected to be called on stage. All of a sudden, here they are called on stage, and then so it's nobody's job to get them off stage once Trump starts talking. But it's a very awkward look, only made more awkward by the fact that Trump then goes on to give a horrifically divisive speech of his that he's always giving, of course, in much the same way that he has on the campaign trail. And he refers to, at some point, as he's beginning to talk about the January 6th stuff, he says something about the January 6th hostages, and it caused in me, and I know that I've written before about the pointlessness of one's reaction, biological reaction, like that visceral disgust that you feel and how worthless that is, but how that is also just a sort of default posture of our politics now, that so much of our politics is about the bile that you feel rising in your throat when someone who you disagree with does something seemingly almost designed to have that reaction in you. And I think, done a pretty good job about not allowing my disgust to dictate my reaction to things. But when Trump is standing there talking about the January 6th hostages with the families of people who'd spent or are still spending much of the last 18 months in Hamas captivity as a result of the hostage taking by Hamas on October 7th, and people who are just hoping to get the bodies back of their loved ones, people who, through no fault of their own, whether they were having breakfast in their kibbutz on the morning of October 7th, or whether they were teenagers at a rave in the desert there, or whether in some cases, none of these families, I don't think, but like literal babies, right? Like there's a 9-month-old baby or something, and a 3 or 4-year-old child who was taken by Hamas and who have not been returned. People who, through no fault of their own, have found themselves in the most horrific living conditions that you can imagine since October 6th or October 7th, 2023. And to use the words January 6th hostages with those people lined up behind him struck me as so utterly immoral and inappropriate and just, like I said, sort of bile-inducing. I was nauseated by this fact that he would go so far as to draw this sort of a comparison with those people lined up behind him. And it to me, it just speaks to his moral depravity in a way that very little else does. And I haven't really seen it pointed out. I guess people are like, we're just so accustomed to hearing him talk about the January 6th criminals as hostages in some way. And then, of course, a matter of hours later, he's freeing them all from prison. He's commuting he's pardoning them all, and then he's commuting the remaining sentences of folks who he has chosen not to pardon. Although I would suspect that those pardons are coming eventually, a little bit further down the line. But to refer to the people who did what they did on January 6th, some of whom committed serious violent crimes, all of whom were participating in something of their own volition that was ill-advised at the very least, and certainly a result of a belief about the world that is not in keeping with reality. To compare those people, to call them hostages with the devastated families of actual prisoners of terrorist war half a world away, it was just utterly unacceptable. And yeah, like I said, I wanted to point it out. I meant to bring it up during the show. It was in my brief notes, and I somehow glossed over it. And I haven't heard anybody else really mention that incongruity there, and I wanted to make sure I got it in here. But anyway, now back to the rest of our conversation. To me, the actions of both incoming and outgoing presidents yesterday speak to the sort of executive lawlessness that is becoming front and center of every administration and is never more on display than at the beginning of every administration, when they rip off every they all do it now. I don't know if you can chart this. I'm sure that somebody has. But like when Bush came in and he says, all right, we're not going to spend the federal money on abortion. And then the next guy comes in and he's like, no, we're going to spend the federal money on abortion after all. And the next guy comes in and like, no more federal money for abortions, right? Like it used to be that sort of back and forth with a few small issues on executive action. We now had dozens. And Biden also did this when he first came in. He issued dozens of executive orders right off the bat. And then he issued one at the end of his presidency where he's like, actually, the 28th Amendment is cool and good, and it actually passed. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? That thing expired decades ago. Right. It's not a thing. You cannot just as the head executive of the executive branch declare it so just because you think that you want it to be. Right. That's not how any of this works. And that sort of general lawlessness was fully on display yesterday with all of the executive actions that Trump is insisting upon as utterly dumb a way, such that it includes we want to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Right? Like and nothing speaks to, and I know it's stupid to read this sort of psychology into the actions of these people, but can you think of anything that speaks to their smallness more than being a person who is offended by the fact that the Gulf of Mexico is called the Gulf of Mexico instead of the Gulf of America? That somehow that calling it the Gulf of Mexico is an affront to us, that we are so fucking tiny and small as to be offended by having to call something Gulf of Mexico.
Tiny little penises.
But what's weird is typically the naming stuff happens when like something is changed, like McKinley was changed to Denali, and they're like, no, fuck that, we're going back to McKinley. But like, it was never, as far as I understand, it was never a Gulf of America, right? It was just Gulf of Mexico.
Freedom fries.
Right, so it's weird that was a point of focus. Was it that Sharpie hurricane incident that got him all bothered? Like, where did this Gulf of Mexico thing come from? It just seems kind of a weird
Bob was so jealous not to get a Sharpie. To
latch onto. And like, and also, like, as far as executive orders, it seems like since legislation is hard, our deliverables will be executive orders. Executive orders basically are for political messaging. Like you were saying about that ERA thing, just to say, like, hey, I did a thing, even though it actually didn't do anything, but you can just kind of parade it around and say, look, look what I did.
It's a statement of purpose.
Right.
And the birthright citizenship one is the one that is most sort of profoundly upsetting to me, where he issues an executive order that says we're not going to recognize the citizenship of children born to illegal immigrants on this nation's soil starting a month from now.
Right.
And I've thought, because I was frustrated the last time we talked about this, to realize that this is an intuition that I have, that I haven't quite figured out why I have that intuition so strongly, which is to say that it makes me profoundly uncomfortable to imagine that a person born here is not automatically a citizen. And this is something that goes back to English common law, so it's a long-established principle in Western systems of justice. There are only a few dozen, or less even, fewer even, countries where this is still the law of the land. A lot of Western European countries that used to have this as a general rule have since gone back in recent decades and said we're going to limit citizenship in various ways, that we're not going to confer automatic citizenship to people that are born here. And obviously, the more authoritarian a place is, the less likely it is that you're going to have automatic citizenship there if you're born to foreign nationals or other strange circumstances. But what I realized, and I've thought about it a lot, and I should probably ultimately just write an essay about it because that's the best way to get these things out. But there's something that gets the relationship between individual and government exactly backwards if the government is allowed to say that a person that was born on our soil is not a citizen. It gets the dignity of who's in charge here precisely backwards, right? Like the individual must be sovereign in anything in terms of the relationship between government and person. The government is fundamentally of, for, and by the people. And I know, like, it sounds so fucking corny to say that out loud, but like these sorts of first principles on which the entire system is built, they really, really matter, right? And like the foundational idea that an individual that is born here, you are not subject to the jurisdiction of something or the authority of something that you have no say in. That wouldn't be fair, right? Like it would be fundamentally unfair. You didn't choose to be here, right? Your parents did things, and then here you were. None of this is of your choosing, but you are a human being born individuated and unique, and with your own rightful dignity that is endowed in you by virtue of that individuation. And some people want to say that's a function of your creator or of your God or whatever. For me, it's just a fact, this strange fact that all of these atoms and molecules gather in a discrete consciousness that is distinct from all of the others, right? It's its own thing. It's its own miraculous package of individual consciousness. And no fucking government has the right to say you don't belong here. You were born here. What does it mean you don't belong here? It doesn't compute. It doesn't cohere. I was born here. I didn't choose it. I just ended up here. How can you tell me I don't fucking belong? How can you tell me that I'm wrong to be here? And it's just completely unacceptable based on everything else that we're supposed to believe about this fucking country. Yeah. And it makes me so fucking mad that he would issue an executive and to tie it back into the lawlessness thing. This is in the fucking Constitution. Yes. And the president doesn't just get to say, no, actually it's not. Right.
It's interesting that like I always thought of Trump as a walking, talking like stress test of the systems. And like this is like the latest example of that. And the question is, would this be laughed out of the Supreme Court, or would there be some angle that enough justices would find to say, hey, there are some carve out in the Constitution saying something about whatever, right? Like, because to me, like on many grounds, it should be rejected, like including like, what is the executive branch doing in this? I mean, because like, how would it work functionally? Because you'll see red states and blue states taking a different approach, right? Because already I think 18 states are suing the president for this specific executive order, and so I don't know how far it'll go up in the courts, but you can't have an inconsistent state to where like 20 or so states are at the hospitals, you're a citizen. And then 20 some other states in conservative areas saying, wait a minute, like, who are the parents? And we need to sort this out. And you're not a citizen just yet. Like, you can't have this inconsistent state in the United States. You have to have some sort of policy that's uniform. And so, like, you would create chaos. And so, like, just for that reason alone, you would think it would be, like, rejected in the courts. But I don't know. Maybe
they're relying upon a 6-word clause in the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which reads as follows: all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's the money clause. Yeah. And subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside, period. So what the Trump administration is going to argue in court, and what they have argued in the executive order, is that illegal immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States because their parents are themselves not citizens, and that therefore they are just like people who are foreign diplomats who have children here. Right. They don't get citizenship largely because they're not asking for it. Right. Yeah. By the way, if they wanted it, they could almost certainly get it. But it's that claim that they're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States because their parents are illegal, and there's not any precedent for this in the history in case law. But there are judges, obviously, who will be amenable to this sort of argument, and it will sadly just come down to a question of how amenable are the current members of the Supreme Court. My suspicion, and my hope, certainly, is that the justices will not side with the Trump
You
administration.
always have a lot of faith in those people for no reason.
On this question. My hope would be that this would be an open and shut 9-0 sort of case. Maybe you get a Thomas or an Alito to go digging and make some obscure originalist argument about it, though I doubt it.
Thomas 1,000% is. Like, there's no way there's going to be a unanimous thing. Thomas is going to, just for whatever reason, find a way out.
It's possible. My hope would be it's 9-0. My expectation is that it could end up 7-2, but I don't see it as possibly being any worse than that. This is, for me, any thought about this from a first principles perspective leads back to what I got so incensed about a few minutes ago, which is you cannot say that the government of the United States can tell someone that is born on its soil that you're not permitted to stay here. It doesn't make any sense with our entire system of government, and I don't know. And then to play it out in terms of our political reality. I'm sorry, but anchor babies aren't a fucking thing, right? Like you're not coming here in order to have a child, in order to make it more difficult for the federal government to get you out of here, right? Is it the case that people come here and build a life and then build a family, and then it so happens that they have these so-called anchor babies? But like this is not a willful decision that is happening, right? Of the millions of children who are born to illegal immigrants over the course of 20 years, how many do we think snuck across the border just to give their children citizenship? It's a non-zero number. Right. I'll grant you that. It happens. There's no doubt. And the reason that they're doing it is because they want a better life for their children than they could possibly build elsewhere, right? And God bless them for that. But like the notion itself is despicable, and it's just, I don't know. I won't. Like I said, I was frustrated with myself for failing to recognize that for me, this is about the sovereignty of the individual rather than the tyranny of the government. The person is what matters here. The government is secondary to the individual. The government is there to serve the individual, not the other way around. Right.
And to the extent that there's a sin, this is a sin of the parent kind of circumstance, right? Like the kid didn't do anything. Kid was born. I don't know why they were getting involved in this.
Yeah. There was a million other things that Trump did that we could probably talk about, but it's going to be a relatively short show because it's relatively late on our end here. I did want to mention quickly, Marco Rubio got unanimous approval from the United States Senate to become the next Secretary of State.
Yeah, that was a slam dunk confirmation.
No surprise there. I thought maybe a couple of the more annoying senators would be hesitant to grant their approval. But oddly, I think that the presence of the more unacceptable options on the list made it much easier and, in fact, politically expedient for Chuck Schumer to insist on unanimity from the Democrats here, right? It makes them look good in a way to give Marco Rubio approval so that they can turn around and vote down the vast majority of the rest of the cabinet picks here.
I don't have this in front of me, but I don't recall there being any unanimous confirmations for Trump the first go round. Were there? I mean, there were a lot of like 60-40, like, just a lot of like.
I don't remember.
Right? Like, I don't recall there being and you're right, I think he does. I mean, Rubio, by all accounts, is very qualified, and so he should have been confirmed. The unanimous vote is likely, as you're saying, like to kind of show like a contrast to what will come later. To say like we're okay. The president, it's his choice. All they got to be is qualified, and we'll approve them. But these other people, like the Secretary of Defense, with all this stuff coming out, and the Director of National Intelligence, then they can try to fight those battles, even though they'll be losing battles because they don't have the numbers. But at least they can say.
You don't think, to get into the specifics here quickly, the Hegseth news that comes out breaking late this evening is that he has an ex-sister-in-law who told senators in a sworn statement that Hegseth was abusive to his second wife. A woman, the lead is a woman once married to the brother of Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary nominee, submitted a sworn statement to the Senate. In a late-hour complication to his confirmation, his lawyer denied her account. Ex-sister-in-law of Hegseth submitted a sworn statement to senators on Tuesday, accused Hegseth, President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, of being so, quote, abusive toward his second wife that she once hid in a closet from him and had a safe word to call for help if she needed to get away. You don't think that those sorts of allegations in a sworn statement to the Senate is going to be a significant enough bump in the road to derail his nomination process?
Not at all. I think the allegations are troubling, but it's not going to move the 52, 53 Republicans that have already said they're going to vote for him, right? So, I don't think they're going to say – because some of this stuff was already, baked in. This guy seems to be a bit of a shithead when it comes to that. And so I just don't see the people who have already come out and stated, the senators, who have said that they're going to confirm him, are going to change their mind at this point, especially with this vote, because this is I won and I want to show power, and this guy who's not that qualified getting confirmed is going to be a demonstration of the power that I have for Trump, right? So, I don't think this is going to change that.
I watched his nomination back and forth between he and the senators, and he took the unusual step of not meeting with any of the Democrats, which led to a confirmation hearing that was, let's say, less than illuminating in terms of his vision for leading the Defense Department, where he basically spent the whole time just doing a campaign stop for Donald Trump, and it felt like and this guy is just a TV pundit,
right.
And he wrote a book that is very much the work of a TV pundit, and it seems like this is a lot because this becomes a fight about Trump, and because it becomes a sort of proxy war about Trump's power. You don't get the opportunity to determine whether or not this person is actually qualified. And none of the Republicans are interested in whether or not he's actually qualified, because the vote is just a way to show allegiance to Trump here in a way that is relatively harm-free. What is the worst case scenario here about what Hegseth is going to your average Republican senator? How bad are things going to be with Hegseth in charge?
Right.
Probably not so bad ultimately, even if he's manifestly unqualified for this. And the fact that within months he goes from saying that flat out, in a podcast interview, women shouldn't be in combat, and he's expressing surprise about how he didn't get nearly as much blowback for that crazy take. That he continues to stand by, that women shouldn't be in combat, as he sort of thought he would. And then he turns around in these hearings and in these meetings with Republican senators saying, "Oh no, I don't mean that at all. I have a much more nuanced take on this, and I think that women are maybe it depends,
right.
but we'll figure it out." And so either he doesn't believe the thing, or he does believe the thing and he's lying. But either way, the about face is noteworthy and certainly worth commenting upon. And instead, it's all just a commentary on sort of Trump's power here.
I mean, from what I read, what he's saying in the testimony is, he recognizes that it's not a palatable thing to say when you're getting confirmed, and so he's not going to say that. But I assume that he believes what he said in the podcast and before. Because he's not alone in that thinking, by the way. There's a lot of people that think that.
Yeah. All right. Any other big news out of yesterday or today that you'd like to comment upon or bring up before we get out of here?
I didn't read the article, but there was some background article on like why Vivek, because there was a story that came out on during the inauguration day that he would be stepping aside from this Doge initiative. And I thought maybe this would be like to demonstrate how efficient we are. We decided that 2 was one too many. Like, look at this.
We don't need 2 billionaires running the Department of Government Efficiency, just the one. Yeah, he's going to run for governor of Ohio.
Which seems like, I mean, is he popular enough to be? I mean, I know he's like a billionaire and his name had been around for a while, but I mean, what's his connection? It seems like this is going to be like I don't know. This seems kind of like a random thing to say you're going to do. It seemed like from the article, just the snippet that I read, is that there was some sort of like a conflict of visions, and Musk's vision won out, and he had to pretend like he left on his own. And so this was a thing to point to, like, I'm running for governor. And he likely will follow through on that. I don't know how successful he'll be at that, but it seems like his first plan was to do this Doge thing.
Right. I also sort of mostly skimmed that article, which was in Washington Post. There'll be a link in the show note if you want to check it out. But apparently they have this this is one of the important paragraphs from the article. Vivek approached Doge from a constitutional perspective, exploring which agencies could be shut down without requiring congressional action, taking aim at the budgeting process within different agencies, and examining legal pathways to strip regulations. He conceived of Doge as a non-governmental body, almost akin to a think tank that would push for major changes that could be codified by law. Musk wasn't interested in those processes, preferring to do things from a technology-first perspective.
That's what I keep saying.
Using the power of technology and data mining to achieve Doge's aims, one of the people familiar with the group said. Basically,
Elon Musk is not going to be able to stand government.
Well, he's already got a White House email address, apparently, so he's not going anywhere.
He's not going to be able to stand it. He's not going to be able to stand it.
I think Lori's right. I think he'll be gone by the summer.
Abe knows you can't just say, I want this thing.
Okay, but
here's money.
You can't just write an executive order that says birthright citizenship isn't a thing either, but they did that too. Apparently what they're going to do is they're going to send out like teams of software engineers so that the IRS will get like a dozen new software engineers who will come in and be the fixers and attack all of the problems
so
the IRS has in terms of
spend more money on more jobs,
efficiency. And that's where all of the billions of dollars of savings will come from. Whereas, like the article says, Vivek thought we can just figure out what massive programs we could just do away with entirely with one fell swoop. What Elon's plan is to deploy like a team of robots. I picture them as the Sentinels from the Matrix.
Yeah.
That just go out.
That's what that sounds like.
And Abe's going to get a knock on his nondescript apartment door.
It's going to be a floating bug.
In a couple weeks, there's going to be a sentinel out there with that stupid Doge face on it.
Yeah.
And that'll be the end of Abe's employment with the federal government.
I'm going to license the robot to work for me. Direct the monies to me.
Speaking of Elon, did you see the clip of him maybe kind of, sort of, probably not, but perhaps doing a Nazi salute?
I mean, it seems like a pretty obvious, and just to avoid any doubt, eliminate doubt, he did it again. Like, now the thing is with, he's like a weird guy. Like, what is his thing? Like, he's got like Asperger's or something? I don't know. He's got...
Whatever.
Yeah, my favorite thing is
There's a lot of people who have a lot of things and they don't do that.
Anytime Elon does something unpalatable, it's like, well, he is a bit of an autist.
Even before he did the Nazi salute, which, I mean, I don't know how else you can describe it but that, right? But like, he was kind of flailing about on stage. Like, he seems to, like, I don't know, maybe he's on something. I don't know what's going on with him, but like he behaves.
He's on many somethings.
He behaves kind of erratically sometimes. But that was like textbook. You know, like sometimes there's like was it like Laura Ingraham? You know, sometimes there's like a still kind of like momentary Nazi thing, and you're like, okay, that did not work. But with him,
Laura's in particular seemed like she almost like clicked her heels together and then did it, and then quickly like hers is hard to defend.
Yeah, but
so is his.
But his was even worse than that.
There's nothing not Nazi about it.
So like, if hers is hard, like if she's at the line and maybe over it, like he is way over it, like because he did it twice.
So I don't think that it was. So I have competing thoughts here, which is that yes, obviously, it's such a, like, the Roman salute is such an unnatural and specific thing to do. Like, when somebody gives you the okay hand, right? Every okay hand that I've been told is actually a white power symbol, I'm immediately, I don't believe
no,
you.
that's
You're a
not.
liar.
There's
That's
nuance.
ridiculous.
That's different. This could also mean this is sign language for asshole. If you move it up and down,
Isn't that like A-okay
okay,
also?
and
Like
you just-
we're all good?
There was like, wasn't
no,
there
it's
like
asshole. If someone does this to you, they're
Oh, damn.
calling
So
you
I
and
guess they
saying
weren't telling
okay,
me everything
asshole.
was okay. Shit.
there was that, it was like was it a California like utility worker whose hand was hanging out the side of the truck
Yeah.
in the okay symbol, and he got fucking shit canned?
Yeah.
Because somebody took a picture of it, and it like that.
So
like,
this
fuck
isn't
you
that.
is my response to that.
This is a very, like, it is not, it takes a lot of energy to put your hand all the way on your shoulder and then with full flex lift it at a very particular angle.
It's the
you
hand-
don't accidentally do that.
It's the fingers together with the thumb slightly tucked that looks so particular, right?
And
like
the
it looks
angle.
very like it is.
and
but,
the palm down, because
Yes.
if it was like a display of love, it would be palm
right,
up.
my heart goes out. He says, "My heart to you," or something like that. When he turns around and he does the second one, that is a very much a palm up sort of gesture usually. I will say, however, that I think that what this is in all likelihood a troll, right? This is
Okay.
just. It doesn't make it good. It doesn't make it defensible. But what it does do is it allows.
We're talking about it.
Right, we're talking about it, and it plays into it's right into the Trump playbook of doing the outrageous thing, having a small degree of plausible deniability about having done the outrageous thing, and then pointing at all of the reaction to the outrageous thing as the actually outrageous thing, right? Like this is just how everything works now, is that a conservative does something terrible, the media reacts to the terrible thing, and they keep reacting to it, and they keep reacting to it until the conservative can point at the reaction as being disproportionate to the accidental thing, is what
They
he will
can
say.
do that, but when it's Nazis, they're going to lose.
I know, but like, do you believe Elon Musk to be in league with the Nazis? And I
What do you mean in league with?
And at the same time, I recognize that it is bad that all of the neo-Nazis got super happy on the internet after Elon Musk did what appears to have been a Nazi salute.
What do you
So I
mean
think
in
it
league
is-
with?
I think it is-
Do I think Elon Musk would be bummed if there were Nazis in charge? Absolutely not.
No, of course he would.
You
He's
think
not-
he'd be bummed?
No, I don't think he's an actual Nazi. I think actual
I'm not
Nazis.
saying he's a Nazi. I'm saying he wouldn't be bummed if the Nazis were in charge.
I don't think it is plausible to believe, and maybe it's just maybe I'm buying too much into the possibility that Elon Musk knows enough about history to know that the Nazis were bad and bad on a scale that we don't have much comparison for.
He probably knows a whole lot
didn't,
about it.
But I think what he's doing here is what everybody on the internet does, and he's a creature of the internet at this point. He's being a lol troll, and he's doing the 4chan thing, and he thinks it's cute and clever. And I don't think it's cute and clever at all. I think it's terrible. But at the same time, I don't think he's an actual fucking Nazi.
I think he's doing that because he's like, look what I can get away with, because enough people will come to, carry his water. Wasn't Musk didn't Ben Shapiro have to take him to Europe to show him like a Holocaust museum or something for him to I guess it was as bad as it. I don't know what he posted on Twitter to make Ben Shapiro want to take him out there, but like he said something insensitive or doubted maybe the number of people that died. But I don't know. He's playing footsie with Nazis. He's doing the Nazi salute. I don't think he would cry over it. Like I think I'm closer to what Lori is saying. I don't think he'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe this.
I don't think he's trying. I don't think he's a Nazi.
Yeah.
I just think he wouldn't be bummed. He'd be like, oh, well, I'm all right.
Yeah,
That's not bothering me.
think it is.
I'm also a big fan of a lot of his robot ideas and the internet and outer space thing. So, he's not all bad. He's just kind of a little bit wouldn't be bummed if there were Nazis.
I don't think you can overstate how not connected to reality he thinks Nazism is. Like, I just don't think that he thinks that Nazism is at hand. Like, I don't think that is, like, he literally thinks it's all a joke.
You think guy who owns Twitter doesn't think Nazism
Yeah, I think he thinks most of the Nazism that is on Twitter is also a joke. Like, I think he might be wrong about the percentage of which it is a joke, but I think that mostly what he thinks he's doing here is hilarious instead of bad. And because, like, obviously, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all being talked about because he wanted us to be talking about it, which is ridiculous.
Here we are. Isn't it interesting? What?
No, what?
I was just going to say it's interesting. Like, you have America. Did we talk about this with the smoking? You have America and you have Europe. If you go back 30 years and you say, okay, you have America with its love of, like, freedom and commerce, and it grows tobacco and shitty healthcare. And you have Europe with, like, centralized government and, like, healthier people and less freedom. Which of these places has more people who smoke cigarettes?
Right.
You would totally think it was America,
Right.
but it's Europe. Except Las Vegas, if it's going to smell like cigarettes everywhere.
You know, that is interesting. I did see some reporting on that. I was surprised when I went to Canada and Montreal how many people smoke cigarettes, and just like casually.
All the time.
And it's like
people go. My clients go to Europe, and they're like, "We had a great time." People smoke everywhere.
It's crazy.
It's disgusting. Like, people who go to Europe, it's like there's so many cigarette smokers everywhere, and it's just, you would so think that it was America where we smoke all the time, and they don't because they think it's disgusting and it's bad for you.
Yeah, we're just culturally we're past it at this point, I think.
I know, but why? It's weird.
But, you know, like, at least down here in Atlanta, they made, like, a concerted effort to, like, go, like, restaurant. Basically, there was, like, some sort of formula. Like, if you were more of a food place and you were a bar place, that was the first place where they discontinued smoking. And then eventually they got to the dive bars. The dive bars were, like, some of the last places here in Atlanta where people could smoke. And then they got rid of that. I think it's been at least 10 years now. And there was some grumbling for, like, a minute. And then everybody, like, I guess, fuck it, we can't smoke. And then, like,
my hair doesn't smell like cigarettes when I go to bed. This isn't so bad.
So basically, and then everybody just kind of acquiesced to the new normal, and people just stopped having opportunities to smoke.
Well, apparently in the Las Vegas casinos, it's 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Well, on the bright side, the property where we're staying, our hotel is a smoke-free facility.
One of the only ones.
One of the few smoke-free casino hotels in Vegas.
Oh, wow. Even on the casino floor, like everywhere, not just, you know.
Yeah,
the whole thing. Whole property is smoke-free, which is nice.
Wow.
We didn't do that on purpose. It's just as it happens. Anyway, like I said, we can't do the Billboard Hot 100 game tonight. Maybe we'll bring it back in the proper show in the future, but who knows? We're going to have to find something that lightens the mood here if we're going to have episodes like tonight's on the regular.
But, oh my God, it's so late. I see you looking at news. I feel like you should not, because we really need to go to bed.
Yeah. Did we ever get, like, was this another troll from them? I heard that there was going to be a big infrastructure announcement today, and then I don't know that I ever saw it. Do we know what that turned into?
There was some sort of $500 billion promise by, like, AI companies to do some sort of AI thing, but this could be like some boondoggle thing that never materializes. But I don't...
It was an AI infrastructure. After all, they made a whole thing about infrastructure week in the first Trump administration. It was like a running gag by the end of it that this was going to be infrastructure week, and they never produced anything. And they promised an infrastructure thing, and it turns out to have been an AI infrastructure thing.
Yeah, basically, Trump announces up to it could be from $0 up to $500 billion in private sector AI infrastructure. And I think there was some sort of private thing at the Foxconn building. There was like some site in Wisconsin. It was supposed to bring a bunch of jobs. It was like $8 billion worth of whatever, and nothing came out of that. I don't know. This seems to be like more in line with that, like a big headline, and then nothing comes from it.
Like I said, we'll get back to the levity and the fun stuff with in future weeks. For now, you have to have endured me screaming at you about Donald Trump, and for that I apologize. You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show on Substack, brainiron.substack.com for more from us, perhaps including future exclusive posts that you can listen to, full of copyrighted material for which no one can take us down because Substack doesn't seem to care. Check out tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com for more from Marc Gillig, who composed our opening and closing themes. The other bright side, to be perfectly frank, it makes the edit lift much easier to not have to deal with the fucking music.
There you go.
And no Strassman today either, because Strassman was on the Jimmy Carter beat, and I guess after all of the Strassman coverage, or Jimmy Carter coverage, Strassman needed a week off because he didn't do jack nor shit this week. Abe, did you make it to the movies this week?
I did. I went to go see The Brutalist. Finally, it came to Atlanta after I don't know how long it was in limited release. This is the
like 3 hour plus Adrian Brody epic.
Yeah, 3 hours.
That includes an intermission.
Yeah, 3 hours, 35 minutes, including a 15-minute intermission. They do a nice little countdown timer. The intermission was nice, although this is not like you're at a ball game where you're using the bathroom and you're getting like concessions, and then there's like long lines, and the 15 minutes are eaten up pretty fast. You go back to refill your soda, like take a piss, like. Everybody should be back with like plenty of time to spare, and yet there was some.
Well, as we were just saying, you run outside, you have a cig.
Yeah, maybe if you're like a smoker, but even with a very generous 15 minutes, there was some disruption a couple of minutes into the second half because people were like, "Oh shit, the movie started!" Like they were startled. So like, I don't know. They could have just played the whole thing through. It would have been fine. It would have been 3 hours and 20 minutes instead of 3 hours and 35 minutes. This is a very well-made movie, like a very well-made movie. I can go on record now and say I don't know when the Oscars will be. I don't know even if they're going to cancel it because of the fires. But Best Actor, Brody is going to win it, and then Best Cinematography, this movie is going to win. But I will say...
I was going to say, oh, God, you beat me to it. I was going to say, there's a big old butt coming. There is a Sir Mix-a-Lot-sized ass on the way here from Abe.
The big butt. I did not care about the story because, so the Brutalist, this guy was like some fancy architect. This basically is like an architect from like Hungary or one of those countries. This is like after the Holocaust. So even though this is like a 3 hour plus movie, not one frame is spent on the actual Holocaust. Basically, this is just like the aftermath, like him trying to pick up the pieces in America. And he kind of gains his footing as a famed architect from whatever, Budapest, right? And he's building these buildings, right? And the whole time I'm thinking, God, these buildings look fucking horrendous, right? But all the people in the movie, they're amazed, like, wow, spectacular building.
Wait, is the Brutalist just of brutalism?
Yes,
the architecture style?
So basically, he's the brutalist artist.
I did not know
I did not know this either. And I'm like, I guess the Holocaust is pretty brutal. I don't know. But like, no, it's this stupid fucking style of building, and they all look like shit. And so I did not like the movie because I didn't care for the art. I didn't care for this guy. This guy's kind of a dick. I know he went through a lot, don't get me wrong. But holy shit. What an asshole this guy is. So I think it's worth seeing just because it's like I said, it's a very well-made movie. I don't know who the cinematographer is, but like it just looks like amazing. But just the buildings look like shit. And I spent like considerable time like Googling, like, cause like, you know, there's some stuff that you can look up and about this style of building, and they all look like shit.
Yeah.
And everybody just thinks highly of it. I was like, I don't know anything about architecture, but I can tell you a shitty building.
Without knowing much about brutalism and the brutalist architecture, I would suggest that it is just like whoever designs like the Family Dollar or the Dollar General stores.
No!
Like to me, that's fucking brutal.
Yeah,
that looks like a. I think
Google it real fast.
I once described. I should look this up real quick because it was a good. You know what's fun is to look up old Facebook posts that you sort of vaguely remember, and reminisce about when you were a clever person on the internet. And I'm just going to search my Facebook history for the word Soviet, because that's all I remember about this post.
Well, so you're sort of onto something. Brutalism is like this, I think of it as depressing 70s.
I mean, yeah, because he's like from that part. He was like from the Soviet bloc. What it ended up being that.
Yeah.
It's like no soul. Like
a lot of DC federal buildings. Federal buildings are brutalist architecture.
I said on the internet on July 19th of 2014, Dollar General stores bubbling up like brick Soviet supply centers just outside the public housing barracks of every crappy neighborhood in town is probably a sign of a really strong economy, right? What a cute quote from me. That's good. It's a good observation by me.
and beers.
To which I responded to myself, also, Parasitic Brick would be a great band name for the Right Terrible brand, which is correct.
Yeah. I will. So again, recommended just because maybe you like that kind of art. I'm not like big on architecture.
I'm not watching
because everything else is fine. Yeah, it's a very long movie.
Imagine trying to get Lori to watch a 3.5-hour movie starring Adrian Brody.
I don't have anything against Adrian Brody.
By the way,
About architecture and the Holocaust.
So here's the trouble with that movie. Just show me the documentary. Give me the 8-hour documentary about this guy and the Holocaust and the architecture. Don't try to make it a fucking stupid movie.
Actually, that would have been preferable if they just did that. There were a lot of that's not like a prude. There were like a lot of weird sex stuff like in the movie. There were like two separate handjob scenes.
Give me the documentary about the weird architecture
and the weird sex stuff. This is just pornography.
Stuff.
Yes.
There was I don't know why you would.
Weren't you also off put by the Emma Stone?
Yeah, but that was a legitimate reason because she was like a kid
like
in an adult body. How dare you? This was just like, what's going on?
Why don't we call porn documentary?
What's weird about, I don't know why you would admit this, but like apparently, I wasn't tracking the Hungarian accent to see how accurate it was to real life. I was reading the captions. But apparently that particular accent was difficult to do. So they dubbed in some AI-generated voice thing to kind of clean up Adrian Brody's...
Sorry, no Oscar for you, Adrian.
Hungarian is one of, Julia told, I think it's only one of 3 languages. It's like Hungarian, Estonian, and one other one in the language family, which makes it really fucking hard to learn.
Yeah.
That's fine. No, sorry, no Oscar.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just also not as a excuse for Adrian Brody, but like, it's like you just can't learn Hungarian.
It would be impressive.
You have to just know
now,
it.
had he nailed it, then you can use that because this is campaign season for the Oscars, right? Why would you volunteer this information? This is going to derail what would be a shoo-in. It's not that Shyamalan thing. I guess he's like another front runner for Best Actor. Get out of here. Brody did a pretty good job, except this needless admission that you fucking used AI to clean up the voice.
Do you know what my Oscar campaign would be for Shyamalan the God? I didn't even use auto-tune.
That's right.
Shyamalan the God didn't even use auto-tune to be Bob Dylan.
That's right.
And yet here we have Adrian Brody, the coward, using AI to mask his deficiencies in nailing the Hungarian accent.
I don't know why. Just a dumb, unforced error. I will say one last thing on the movie front. I did not see another movie, but the Razzies released their nominations for shitty products from the last year. Jon Voight, old reliable Jon Voight, he had 5 movies out in 24. I've seen like 2 or 3 of them, like Reagan, Megalopolis, and some other stuff, right?
Is this a Bruce Willis at the end of his career sort of situation where like the family is just like, let's just get him a few lines and get him out of there and get the paycheck?
I don't know, but
things
I
are going
think,
downhill quick.
Trump just nominated him to be like the ambassador to Hollywood or something, like him and Stallone and some other people and Mel Gibson. But so he comes out with 5 movies in 24. And the Razzies, I didn't know you can group. They nominated him for Best Actor in 4 of those movies. Like they say, like you're just and I don't know how it works with the nomination process, but basically they're like, take your pick. He's the worst actor in any of these 4 movies, I did not see that 5th movie. I don't know how well he did in that. I don't know why that was not included.
You saw 4 John Voight movies this year?
Yeah, so Reagan,
Wow.
Megalopolis, which I've seen both. He was not very good in either. And then Shadowland and Strangers, I did not see either of those.
My kids were watching National Treasure on, I think, Disney Plus, and I walked into the room for the last few minutes of it, and I must say, first of all, John Voight's a perfectly good actor.
Oh, he's great. He was
a
great asshole coach in Varsity Blues. He was great in, Chinatown or whatever that was back in the day. He's been in some good movies.
The scene at the very end of National Treasure when, spoilers, they find the treasure room and it's full of the national treasure, and it's this big glorious display of golden opulence. The face that he makes is, and it's very clearly a CGI room. Like there's nothing here. There's not 4 fucking football fields worth of treasure that he is gazing upon. It is among the most believable faces I've ever seen. He embraces his cinematic son, Nicolas Cage, grabs him around the neck, and the face is just pure adulation and joy for the thing that's happening. And it is sincerely transporting and believable. And I condemn the Razzies for picking on old man John Voight, which I didn't realize they were doing until you told me that.
Pretty cruel, though.
But having just a few days ago, having seen John Voight give a face that was perfect, I reject the Razzies.
Well, that was also, that movie came out a little while ago.
Yeah, a little bit. Anything else you watched on TV?
No, football, but that's it.
Just the football. Abe, all right, Lori, what did we watch?
Fear and Loathing.
That's right. Ahead of going to Las Vegas, I've got Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas on my DVD shelf down here in the basement, and we brought that upstairs. Lori had never seen it, or never properly seen it anyway.
Is that the quintessential Las Vegas movie? Like, are there others running in the running?
There's other, like The Hangover.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
No,
which is just terrible.
Yeah, Fear and Loathing is the one to watch, and certainly the essay to read if you are looking for that, which is easily findable online if you just Google it up. I hadn't seen this movie all the way through in quite some time, despite owning it on DVD. It is as strongly written a movie as one can name, which is fair because Hunter S. Thompson is a tremendous writer, and a lot of the dialogue and the voiceover in the movie is just a direct lift from what Hunter S. Thompson had written in the essay upon which this movie is based, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And then the performances are pretty uniformly spectacular. Certainly with the leads in Johnny Depp as Hunter S. Thompson, who's perfect, and Benicio del Toro as his esteemed attorney, also fantastic. And then the rest of it is like, it's a lot of American grotesquerie. It's an appropriate movie for this week. Rarely has there been such a perfect marriage of filmmaker and material.
That's the thing. I wish I had known it was Terry Gilliam going into it. It would have made a lot more sense.
Yeah, and it didn't even occur to me to tell Lori ahead of time that this is a Terry Gilliam movie, because that's just like, it's like, well, this is air we're breathing. Like, yes, Fear and Loathing was made by Terry Gilliam. Everyone knows this, but Lori didn't know this.
Credits rolled, and I was like, oh, okay. Now it makes sense.
Yeah, and so I like the sort of fantasticism, the absurdity of it, the sort of things that I think would probably rub Abe the wrong way.
Yeah,
are the parts of it that I really get a kick out of and that I enjoy. It's one of the you say is it the definitive Vegas movie? And I think yes, probably. With the exception of, like, I'm sure that Vegas people would name half a dozen Elvis movies or whatever. That would
Viva
be
Las Vegas.
more representative. For me, it's one of the best drug movies that's ever been made, and one of those rare great drug movies that is infinitely rewatchable. Like, Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream is a great
awful.
drug movie that you maybe want to see
same with
once
Trainspotting. Awful.
or twice. Trainspotting is a great movie that you don't necessarily
There is
want to
that
see
movie,
again.
Vegas Vacation, Casino, Ocean's 11. I think Ocean's
There you
11
go.
is like a more fun. I mean, it's more modern, certainly.
Could an argument be made now that you've named Casino and Ocean's 11, and we have Terry Gilliam? Is there a subject that is more attractive to the auteur than Las Vegas? That's kind of funny.
Probably.
That so like you have Oliver Stone and Kubrick both do Vietnam movies, for example, at roughly the same time. What other examples could we come up with of sort of a subject or even city as subject?
Scorsese in New York.
That
Yeah, New York.
well, but in terms of Scorsese did Casino,
Yeah,
Soderbergh did Ocean's 11, Terry Gilliam did Fear and Loathing. Like those are three very Vegas movies by three
That is true, yeah.
very distinct voices in American cinema. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. But anyway, I love this fucking movie, and we get a young Christina Ricci here in a small role. We get a very young Tobey Maguire in a small role. And a number of other interesting cameos as well.
I like when he admits that the boomers fucked up.
Yeah, and there's
Best part of the movie.
Yeah, the best part of the movie is the voiceover, and it culminates in Depp reading part of the essay from the hotel room, like knee deep in a jacuzzi or in a pool. Like he's just filled the hotel room with water by mistake, and he's typing his essay in that. As scenes from the Vietnam War flash on the hotel walls, but it's one of those drug movies that is equal parts horrifying and hilarious, the way that drugs often are, and yeah, it's a great movie. And what's weird is that even though I know it's a very adult movie, I really want to show my kids the first act. Like I want them to experience it as young as possible, even though like I really don't want them to see, like they're not ready for the bulk of this movie.
There's so much that's not right.
But like the opening act is just, it's bizarre, and it sort of goes a million miles an hour, and it's like it's full of of indelible imagery and indelible words that I think can stick with you for a very long time. And like the sooner I get it in their brains, the better, I think. As inappropriate as that probably sounds to anyone who's seen the movie recently. Have you ever seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Abe?
I have. I keep getting it confused. Is this the one with Nicolas Cage or the one with Johnny Depp?
No, that's Leaving Las Vegas.
Right, that's Leaving Las
These
Vegas.
fucking movies. Which one is which?
Fear
The
and
drugs.
Loathing is the one that we watched with all of the drugs
Johnny
and
Depp.
That's Johnny
and the
Depp.
weirdness
Okay.
and the Johnny Depp.
I'm gonna watch
yeah.
that this weekend to kind of separate the two. But for whatever reason, my
To be
brain.
with us. You'll be with us.
Yes.
But in the 70s.
Yeah, I'll watch it. But like
Which is also just now again.
I'm lumping.
So it's great. We're doing great.
I'm lumping those two movies together.
Yeah.
What else did we watch? Anything?
I don't think so.
I think
we
we
played Cuphead.
Played some Cuphead. We have one episode still to go
We have
in
one episode of
Squid Game, and we have not yet started season 2 of Severance,
Yeah, that's it.
which came out, but we have not begun. One more quick thing before we get out of here tonight, which references back to the opening lengthy essay / appreciation for my departed stepfather, which is to say, and this is easy advice probably, but anytime you have an opportunity to say something to someone that is nice and complimentary of something that they have done, just go ahead and fucking do it. That's fucking lame and silly maybe. And to anybody who is a nice person, probably doesn't need to be said, right? But not all of us are nice people, and certainly none of us are nice people all of the time. And Tom had said to me many times through the years how much he appreciated various things that I wrote when I would write them. He was never, ever shy about expressing appreciation for something that I had written, which I cannot possibly express how much that means to me. It means a great deal, and I will keep it with me literally for as long as I live, because it mattered a lot. Not because it came from him necessarily, although that was appreciated, but that it comes from anybody. It's always worth doing. So I just wanted to say that before we get out of here tonight. Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
Yo, you can do 2 takes every now and then.
If it's one word.
Second one was very forced.
I'm gonna use the first later, by the way. That second later sucked ass.
Later. Well, you got to enjoy the trip. Try not to lose too much money, Bob.
No, I
No,
won't lose
we
too
have
much
money set aside to lose.
Okay. That's good.
Also, I'm going to have a system, right? And I'm going to take $100.
The system, yes.
Put it on black.
I'm going to get. That's right. I'm going to put it on black. And if it's red, I'm going to put $200 on black.
There we go.
And if it's red again, I'm going to put $400 on black.
Oh, that's right. What is this scheme called? It's like a thing, right?
Chris Howard. It's called.
Chris Howard said it was the no-fail way to win money in Vegas.
It
problem
fails.
being that there's also green often on the table.
Yeah.
There's always at least 1 green and sometimes as many as 3 greens.
Yeah.
You got to find one of those one
We were
green
watching
tables.
3-card poker videos.
Yeah, I want to play. So, and Lori is super nervous about such things.
I'm so nervous.
Understandably so. Like, it's a little awkward to go sit at a table as somebody who's never really done this before and be like, hey, mister, deal me in.
Yeah.
I've got money. You've got cards. Let me have some of them cards.
I just want to go and have them give me cards and not give them money. And I promise I won't win money. Just
Right.
see what happens.
Yeah. There should be like a table for that, right? Like get your...
There should be.
right?
But like 3-card poker is super easy. And even they have a table game version of... It's called Ultimate Texas Hold'em, where you sort of are just playing Texas Hold'em against the dealer, sort of like blackjack, instead of against the whole table.
So you don't even need other people. It could just be just you and...
Well,
Could just be
and
heads
not
up,
that you
yeah.
don't need them, but you don't need to try to fool them or
Okay.
trick them or
Okay.
lie to them or
Right.
whatever you do in poker.
Right, and there's
It sucks.
betting but no bluffing, because it's just all going to come down
It's
to...
just what happens.
The cards are going to come out regardless
with
of what
money.
happens.
Okay.
So I want to play some of that. Like, I want to play some actual poker. I don't want to potentially like put down $500 for like a poker buy-in tournament or something
well,
like
that's
that.
not what we're going to do.
Which could take
Because
half a day or whatever. Like, I
I'll
don't want to do
just
that.
Go walk around by myself. Find someone else to hang out with.
But I want to play a little bit of poker. I want to play a little bit of slots, and then
Why?
because it's fun.
I don't know if it's fun.
You should be aware
And then,
that, when you play, especially if you're going to play with some money, they ply you with alcohol so you can
Yeah.
make worse decisions. So just be
Yeah.
mindful of your strategy.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to. I know it's fucking famous last words, but I'm gonna try to not get fucking housed. Like at any point,
No, we need to not. We're supposed to be enjoying ourselves.
I don't want to have even one fully housed night.
Yeah. No, me either.
And I suspect that we're gonna have at least one fully housed
No,
night.
we won't. It'll be Sunday, but we won't.
Yeah, it's gonna be the football day. But I would rather not.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.